I asked four of the world's most advanced AI models one simple question. Who will win Portugal versus Colombia? I honestly expected almost identical answers. After all, they're all analyzing the same teams, the same players, the same World Cup, but instead, they completely disagreed. One AI believes Cristiano Ronaldo will once again prove why he's football's greatest clutch player. Another thinks Colombia are about to expose Portugal's biggest weakness. And one prediction completely caught me off guard. So today, we're going to investigate every prediction, not just to see who each AI picked, but to find out which AI actually understands football the best. Because this match is much bigger than most people realize. At first glance, this looks like another World Cup group stage game. Portugal, Colombia, 3 points. But that's not the real story. This match could completely change the path both teams take through the World Cup. Colombia sit at the top of Group K with 6 points after beating Uzbekistan and DR Congo. Portugal are second with 4 points after an unexpected draw against DR Congo before responding with a dominant 5-0 victory over Uzbekistan. That means the equation is simple. Colombia only need a draw to finish first. Portugal have only one option. They have to win. And that difference changes everything. One team can afford patience, the other cannot. One team can control emotions, the other has to chase the game if things don't go according to plan. That's exactly why this isn't just about football ability. It's about pressure, decision-making, psychology, and knowing when to attack, or when to wait. But here's where things become fascinating. When I asked ChatGPT who would win, it didn't immediately choose a team. Instead, it started by asking one question. Who controls the midfield? And that might be the biggest clue in this entire investigation. Unlike many football fans who immediately focus on Cristiano Ronaldo or Luis Diaz, ChatGPT focused somewhere else entirely, the midfield, because according to its analysis, whoever controls the center of the pitch will probably control the entire match. Think about Portugal for a moment. Everyone talks about Ronaldo, everyone talks about Bruno Fernandes, but Portugal's biggest strength isn't actually one player. It's how the entire team moves together. Roberto Martinez has built a side that wants to dominate the ball. They average nearly 64% possession. Their passing accuracy sits around an incredible 90%. Only Spain has produced more long passing sequences during this tournament. That tells you something important. Portugal don't want chaotic football. They want rhythm, control, patience. They want opponents chasing shadows until a gap appears. Then suddenly, Bruno Fernandes breaks a defensive line with one pass. Vitinha speeds up the tempo. João Neves wins the second ball, and before defenders can react, Cristiano Ronaldo is already attacking the penalty area. It's a system, not just individual brilliance. And according to ChatGPT, that's why Portugal have the slight edge. Here's where the prediction becomes really interesting, because ChatGPT also identified Portugal's biggest danger. Colombia don't actually mind giving opponents possession. In fact, sometimes they want it. Their game is built around forcing mistakes, winning the ball high, then attacking before defenses recover. Luis Diaz becomes devastating when there's space behind fullbacks. Daniel Muñoz times his overlapping runs brilliantly. James Rodríguez doesn't need 20 touches. He only needs one perfect pass. Against DR Congo, James created 5 chances in a single match, the most by a Colombian player at the World Cup since Carlos Valderrama back in 1998. That's the kind of creativity Portugal cannot afford to ignore. Because while everyone prepares for Ronaldo, Colombia have multiple players capable of deciding the game. So, if Portugal are better with the ball, and Colombia are more dangerous without it, who actually has the advantage? ChatGPT's answer surprised me. After analyzing both teams, ChatGPT gave Portugal a narrow advantage, not because of Ronaldo alone, and not because of their 5-0 win over Uzbekistan. Instead, it believed Portugal have one crucial weapon: their ability to stay calm under pressure. Portugal know exactly how they want to play. They build from the back. They recycle possession. They stretch the pitch, then suddenly increase the tempo. It's controlled football, and if they establish that rhythm early, Colombia may spend long periods chasing the ball. That's exactly what Roberto Martinez wants, because every extra minute Portugal dominate possession is another minute where Ronaldo only needs one opportunity, and history tells us one chance is often enough. This was the part that surprised me most, despite leaning toward Portugal. ChatGPT identified one scenario where everything changes. If Colombia score first, the entire tactical battle flips upside down. Remember, Colombia don't need to win. A draw already secures first place. Imagine they take an early lead. Portugal suddenly have no choice but to attack. Their defensive line pushes higher, their fullbacks commit forward, midfielders take more risks. Exactly the type of game Colombia love. More space, more transitions, more opportunities for Luis Diaz to run directly at defenders. That's why ChatGPT didn't predict an easy Portugal victory. It predicted a match balanced on one moment, one mistake, one transition, one goal. At this point, ChatGPT had Portugal edging the contest. The reasoning sounded convincing. The tactics made sense, honestly. I thought every other AI would reach almost exactly the same conclusion. But then I asked Gemini, and everything changed. Gemini didn't just disagree with ChatGPT. It looked at this match from a completely different perspective, and its prediction might be the most unexpected of them all. When I finished reading ChatGPT's prediction, I was convinced Portugal would probably be the favorite across every AI. They had just demolished Uzbekistan 5-0. Cristiano Ronaldo looked sharp again. Bruno Fernandes was creating chances. Vitinha was controlling games. On paper, it felt obvious. But then I asked Gemini, and within seconds, it challenged almost everything ChatGPT had just argued. Not because Gemini believed Colombia had better players, but because it believed this isn't a normal football match. It's a tournament match. And tournament football follows different rules. Instead of asking, who is the better team? Gemini asked a completely different question. Who actually needs to win? And suddenly, everything looked different. According to Gemini, pressure is the biggest player on the pitch. Think about the situation. Colombia arrived with 6 points, 2 wins, confidence, momentum, and most importantly, they only need 1 point. Portugal don't have that luxury. A draw isn't enough. Second place could leave them facing a much tougher knockout route. So from the first whistle, Portugal are carrying the weight. Every missed chance increases the pressure. Every wasted attack becomes more frustrating. Every minute without a goal helps Colombia. Gemini argued that this psychological advantage could completely reshape the match, because when one team is forced to chase victory, mistakes become much more likely. One of the biggest misconceptions in modern football is that possession automatically means control. Gemini completely rejected that idea. Instead, it argued Colombia could willingly allow Portugal to dominate possession, not because they're weaker, but because it's exactly where they become dangerous. We've already seen it in this tournament. Colombia don't panic when opponents keep the ball. They stay compact, force mistakes, then attack with incredible speed. Luis Diaz is at his best when defenders are running backwards. Daniel Muñoz has already scored in both group matches by timing his forward runs perfectly. James Rodríguez doesn't need endless possession. He waits patiently, then delivers one pass that changes everything. Gemini described Colombia as a team that doesn't need 50 attacks. They only need 2 or 3 good transitions. And against a side forced to attack, those moments become much easier to find. So, ChatGPT trusted Portugal's control. Gemini trusted Colombia's patience. 2 AIS. 2 completely different football philosophies. But the biggest surprise was still coming. Because Claude ignored tactics almost entirely. When I asked Claude the exact same question, I expected another tactical breakdown. Maybe pressing. Maybe formations. Maybe Ronaldo versus Diaz. Instead, Claude focused on something almost nobody talks about before big matches. Decision-making under pressure. Because according to Claude, the team that manages its emotions better usually wins games like this. And when you think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense. Every World Cup creates moments where players don't lose because they're technically worse. They lose because pressure changes their decisions. A midfielder rushes a pass. A defender dives into a tackle. A striker snatches at a finish instead of staying composed. Claude argued that Portugal could face exactly this problem, not because they're nervous, but because the match situation forces urgency. Imagine it's still 0-0 after an hour. Every minute that passes favors Colombia. Portugal become more aggressive, the crowd becomes louder, the passes become riskier, the spaces behind the defense become larger. Suddenly, the game Colombia wanted starts to appear. Claude also highlighted something impossible to ignore. Cristiano Ronaldo. Normally, pressure affects everyone. But Ronaldo has built an entire career around embracing moments most players fear. He just became the first footballer ever to score at 6 different World Cups against Uzbekistan. He didn't simply score, he reminded everyone why defenders can never relax against him. Because Ronaldo doesn't need 10 chances, he often needs 1. Claude believed Portugal's greatest strength isn't their tactics. It's having a player capable of changing the entire match with a single finish, and in tournament football, that matters more than almost anything else. But Claude also asked one uncomfortable question. What if Colombia stopped Ronaldo? Without actually focusing on Ronaldo, one of the smartest comments before this match actually came from Colombia manager Nestor Lorenzo. He warned that focusing only on Cristiano Ronaldo would be a mistake, because Portugal are much more than one player. Vitinha controls possession. Bruno Fernandes breaks defensive lines. João Neves wins midfield battles. Claude completely agreed. It argued that Colombia's biggest strength is their discipline, if they remain compact. They don't need to man-mark Ronaldo. They simply stop the passes reaching him. Because even the greatest striker in history becomes isolated without service. That tactical discipline could decide everything. At this point, the investigation had become far more confusing than I expected. ChatGPT believed Portugal's midfield control would be enough. Gemini believed Colombia's patience would eventually frustrate Portugal. Claude believed psychology, not tactics, would decide the winner. 3 advanced AI models, 3 intelligent analyses, 3 different conclusions. And honestly, I still didn't know which one I trusted most. But then I opened Grok, and somehow, its prediction was the boldest of them all. Because while every other AI focused on systems, Grok believed one Colombian player could completely destroy Portugal's game plan, and that prediction changed the entire investigation. After reading 3 completely different predictions, I thought I had seen every possible angle. ChatGPT trusted Portugal's control, Gemini trusted tournament psychology, Claude trusted composure under pressure. So when I opened Grok, I expected another debate about Ronaldo, another discussion about Bruno Fernandes, or maybe another tactical breakdown of Portugal's midfield. Instead, Grok immediately focused on one name, Luis Diaz. Not Cristiano Ronaldo, not James Rodríguez, not Bruno Fernandes, Luis Diaz. And honestly, the more I read, the more it started to make sense, according to Grok. Portugal's biggest strength could also become their biggest weakness. Portugal love controlling possession. Their fullbacks push high. Their midfield steps forward. The defensive line moves closer to the halfway line. That's exactly how Roberto Martinez wants his team to play. It squeezes opponents, it creates passing options, and it keeps Portugal on the front foot. But there's another side to that strategy. Whenever you push players forward, you leave space behind them. And Grok believed Luis Diaz is one of the most dangerous players in the tournament when attacking open space, if Colombia win the ball. And James Rodríguez finds Diaz early. Portugal's defenders could suddenly find themselves sprinting toward their own goal. That's a race very few defenders want to lose. But Grok didn't stop there. It pointed toward another player, one who hasn't received nearly as much attention, and he might become Colombia's surprise hero. While everyone talks about the superstar names, Daniel Muñoz has quietly become one of Colombia's most important players. He has scored in both group stage matches. His timing from wide areas has been exceptional. He doesn't constantly attack, he waits, he studies the movement, then suddenly appears inside the penalty area. Grok argued that Portugal's attention on Luis Diaz could create exactly the kind of space Muñoz loves attacking. It's a reminder that football's biggest games are rarely decided only by the biggest stars. Sometimes it's the player nobody is discussing who changes everything. By this point, the investigation had become fascinating, not because one AI was obviously right, but because every AI looked at football through a completely different lens. ChatGPT believed structure wins matches. Gemini believed tournament pressure changes everything. Claude believed emotional control separates champions from contenders. Grok believed individual matchups could completely rewrite the game. And that's what makes football so unpredictable. The same 90 minutes, the same players, the same statistics. Yet 4 advanced AI models reached 4 very different conclusions, which raises an interesting question. If artificial intelligence can't fully agree, maybe this match really is impossible to predict, but after reading every prediction, one question remained. Which AI would I actually trust? Here's what stood out to me. Portugal probably have the stronger squad on paper. Their midfield is one of the most technically gifted in the tournament. Bruno Fernandes continues to create chances that very few players even see. Vitinha dictates the tempo beautifully. João Neves brings incredible energy both with and without the ball. And of course, there is Cristiano Ronaldo, even at this stage of his career. Defenders know that switching off for just 1 second can be enough. History has taught us that. But football isn't played on paper. It's played under pressure. And Colombia have quietly looked like one of the most balanced teams in this World Cup. They defend together, they press intelligently, they transition with purpose, and perhaps most importantly, They don't panic. That calmness becomes incredibly valuable in tournament football, especially when a draw is enough. Everyone will be watching Ronaldo. Everyone will be watching Luis Diaz, but I think this match will actually be decided somewhere else. The midfield. If Portugal keeps circulating possession, if Bruno Fernandes keeps finding pockets of space, if Vitinha controls the rhythm, Portugal will create enough chances to win. But if Colombia disrupt that rhythm, if James Rodríguez starts receiving the ball between the lines, if Diaz starts running into open space, the momentum changes instantly. That's why I don't think this becomes an open, end-to-end football match. I think it becomes a chess match. Every decision matters. Every transition matters. Every mistake matters. So, after listening to every AI, after studying the tactics, after looking at the psychology, here's my prediction. I think Portugal will have more possession. I think they'll create more sustained attacks. But I also think Colombia will create the more dangerous moments in transition. That makes this one of the hardest matches to call in the entire group stage. If Portugal score first, their control becomes incredibly difficult to break. But if Colombia score first, everything changes. Portugal will be forced to attack. Spaces will open. The game becomes exactly what Colombia want. That's why I believe the first goal is the single biggest moment of this match. More important than possession, more important than statistics, more important than reputation. Whoever scores first could end up deciding the winner of Group K. Maybe the most surprising part of this investigation wasn't which team the AIS preferred. It was discovering why they disagreed. Each AI looked at football differently. One valued tactics, one valued psychology, one valued composure, one valued individual matchups. And the truth is, real football is probably a combination of all four. That's why the World Cup continues to surprise us. Because no algorithm, no statistic, and no prediction can fully capture what happens when the whistle blows. Now it's your turn. Which AI do you trust the most? ChatGPT, backing Portugal's midfield control? Gemini, believing tournament pressure favors Colombia? Claude, trusting composure over tactics? Or Grok, convinced Luis Diaz can change everything? And more importantly, who do you think wins Portugal versus Colombia? Drop your prediction and your scoreline in the comments. When the final whistle blows, we'll find out which AI really understood football and which one got it completely wrong.